Greetings, this is Dan Coonan. I'm coming to you today with my latest presidential spirits profile from Mystic, Connecticut, and that's a replica of the Amistad behind me. And that can only mean one thing, that John Quincy Adams is the subject of the latest presidential profile. He's an interesting one in the Saloon, in the novel, because he does embody a lot of the themes of the story, really, and primarily that he detested partisan politics, and he plays a role in the Saloon as an anti-slavery voice, and he was somebody that really stood for education for all, and in the Saloon I used him. The manager of the Saloon did not have an education, and of all the presidents, I chose John Quincy Adams as the one that most likely might have befriended him and really helped him with his education. John Quincy Adams was a professor at Harvard at one point in his life. He had perhaps the best bloodlines of any of our presidents, being the son of two brilliant people, and both of them influential in America, in American history, and in the formation of the new country, being John Adams, his father, the second president, and Abigail Adams, who was a strong woman at that time, and was behind the scenes very influential with her husband in the formation of the new country. He was a bit of a child prodigy, smart as a whip, being the product of those two, and he had a front row seat to the formation of the country. In fact, when the Battle of Bunker Hill broke out, John Adams had told Abigail to take him away and really run as far as they could, but she brought him to the top of Penn Hill, and they observed the battle from a distance because she wanted to. She was concerned, and she wanted him to see that. He then he spent a lot of time in Europe in his early teens. When John Adams was in Paris, he dined often as a 12-year-old at Thomas Jefferson's house, his three-story house on the cul-de-sac in Paris that he rented. And at that point, although he had like all the Adams, he had kind of a love-hate thing going on with Jefferson all his life. At that point, he really admired Jefferson and loved spending time, as much time as he did, with him at his place in Paris. He, at age 14, he was off to St. Petersburg, Russia, to serve as a private secretary for our minister to Russia. Again, at an incredibly early age, he was doing some really important things, and he came back and went to Harvard and finished Harvard in 2 years. Was bored with Harvard and got right to it in terms of practicing law, being a political thinker and essayist, and teaching at Harvard. He taught both at Brown and at Harvard. When Washington became president, Washington certainly wanted John Quincy Adams. He respected him, wanted him in his administration in some role, but they were both, John Adams and Washington were both very concerned with nepotism, interestingly enough, and decided against it. But ultimately, Washington just wouldn't be denied on that, and he appointed him minister to the Netherlands. Quincy Adams would later become minister to Prussia, minister to Great Britain, in addition to running for senator in Massachusetts. He became senator in Massachusetts, which also enabled him to teach at Harvard, and ultimately Monroe made him Secretary of State. And he really, in terms of his long-term reputation, he might be one of the best secretaries of state we've ever had. He was brilliant as a diplomat and negotiated to get really the acquisition of Florida, as well as make inroads toward the Oregon territory as well. And he authored the Monroe Doctrine for President Monroe about America coming to the defense of anyone in the Western Hemisphere, either the North or South America, who came under attack from a foreign power. And in addition to all that, he was appointed by Madison to the Supreme Court. He was approved by the Senate for that appointment and turned it down. So when you take all of that together, when he became president, he was about as qualified as anyone we have ever had. I think there's a couple of the others. Martin Van Buren was very qualified, and of course George H.W. Bush was incredibly qualified. And like those three eminently qualified presidents, he just had a one-term presidency and was not necessarily as successful as his promise certainly showed, but will long be remembered for his being a very effective Secretary of State. He really kind of loathed politics, and he wasn't good at friendships or necessarily connecting with people, and he just wanted to do the right thing and be guided by what was right for the country, and that led him often to go against his party, which I think kind of fits with the novel and some of the messages of the novel. While it might speak well of him, it actually hurt him in the sense of his political future at times. And when he was a Federalist, he upset the Federalists, and when he was a Democratic Republican, he upset the Democratic Republicans. But he did manage to, despite his the way he abhorred politics, he did manage to get elected in kind of a political maneuver, actually. Four candidates won states in the 1824 election. Andrew Jackson won the most and had the most electors, and it went to the House of Representatives, and Henry Clay threw all his support behind John Quincy Adams and made John Quincy Adams the president and elevated him in numbers above Jackson, and then John Quincy Adams rewarded Clay by making him Secretary of State, and that it was kind of the end of him, really. Perhaps maybe that dug for him a hole that he couldn't get out of, and he was branded by Andrew Jackson for the corrupt bargain that he had made, as a result of that and some other things, the fracturing of the Democratic Republican Party. All four of those candidates, by the way, that won states were all from the same party, the Democratic Republican Party, which splintered after that election. But it really hurt his chances of governing. Ironically, he had a vision, and a lot of his vision ultimately came to bear by other presidents and after he was gone. But it kind of the politics of the day kind of swallowed him up at the time. One of the quirks about him that I allude to in the book is that he started each day. He arose early, he'd build himself a fire, he'd read the Bible, and then he'd go out to the Potomac from the White House. He'd strip naked and do a morning swim in the Potomac, and he really believed in that as a way to just kind of invigorate him and get him started each day. And he didn't have a great relationship with many women in his life, and some would suggest that he perhaps it was a blind spot, and even his wife might even say that, perhaps. But Anne Royal, who was the first professional female journalist and a real trailblazer, she wanted an interview with him, and so the story goes, she went out one morning and sat on his clothes while he was swimming in the Potomac, and would not give them up until he submitted to an interview, which he did, bobbing from the shore, as the story goes. Who knows if there's truth to that, but she did get that interview. his record as president didn't really earn him much loyalty from his party, and he didn't want to campaign. And this is in 1828, and when Jackson would attack him in the press, he didn't want to respond. And again, well, that might speak well of him as a person, maybe not as a politician. So as a result, he really didn't have much to run on to defeat Jackson, and he was defeated rather soundly. And he took it much like his dad had taken it in losing to Jefferson years before. He didn't attend the inauguration and kind of went back to Massachusetts with his tail between his legs. And he's famous, by the way, for he is the one, Quincy Adams, who is credited with the quote, "There's nothing more pathetic than an ex-president." Ironic that he would say that, because he, in his post-presidency, he did perhaps more than any of them. He very quickly was solicited to run for Congress. This is as an ex-president, and he did. And he served 9 terms in the House, representing Massachusetts, his district, and really became a powerful anti-slavery voice. And he kind of spearheaded a long campaign to get rid of the gag rule in the House, which prevented any discussion of any kind about slavery, and he got that overturned. And he really kind of found himself in doing that, and loved that part of his career. He had 2 strokes on the House floor, and the second of which they ushered him into the chamber for the speaker, and he spent 2 days there before he passed away. So he literally died with his boots on, and ended up very content. His last words were specifically was that this is the end of earth. I am content. So the reason I chose to profile him here at Mystic Seaport is that this is where the replica of the Amistad is, which was the schooner ship owned by a couple of Spaniards in Cuba who were sailing 47 captured Africans who had been captured in Mindy Land, called Sierra Leone today, captured and brought to Cuba, sold, and they were being transported to another spot in Cuba when they mutinied and killed a few of the captains, but kept 2 folks alive, the 2 Spaniards alive, and asked to be returned to Africa, to turn the ship toward to Africa. The ship ended up going up the coastline and was taken over by the U.S. Navy outside of Long Island, and a huge legal battle ensued over what to do with these captured folks who no one really knew initially who they were, where they were from. They could not speak English, they could not speak Spanish. It became quite a legal mess, really. It happened in 1839 after the presidency. John Quincy Adams was a member of the House of Representatives, and he was solicited to try to assist in the cause of the Africans. And initially he resisted, and it proceeded through the courts and ultimately got to the Supreme Court. And Martin Van Buren, who was president and running again at the time, really didn't want to be bothered with it, and opposed it, and ultimately I think that was one of the reasons, coupled with his stance about anti-slavery, that John Quincy Adams agreed to take the case to the Supreme Court, which he did, and he challenged Van Buren in that case for abusing his power, but he very eloquently referred to the Declaration of Independence in his arguments and in his closing summary, and invoked that and the fact that all men are created equal to appeal to these to the Supreme Court, 7 of which were slaveholders. It's fair to say he earned his nickname. The House members called him Old Man Eloquence, and it's fair to say he earned that nickname again in arguing to the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court agreed with him. But the reasons weren't. It wasn't some sweeping ruling that indeed all men are created equal. No, it was that these Africans had not been slaves in the first place, and that's where they found that they could not be held captive now, and that they weren't to be accountable for any crimes while they were improperly being held captive, and that they should be returned to Africa. And so that was a very it was an epic trial in the history of our country, and although it didn't really pave the way in terms of legal precedents, maybe in terms of the just the way the country looked at this and started to describe and look at these events as something that needed to be dealt with, and dealt with seriously. This was the mutiny was 1839. The trials took place over the next couple of years, so we're still 2 decades away from the Civil War. But you see some splinters, and you see certainly Martin Van Buren was afraid to take an action because he didn't want to upset the Southern slaveholders, and he didn't want to upset the Northern states as well. But I think it's something that John Quincy Adams clearly will be remembered for, stepping in at that time and doing what he does best. So I hope you enjoy the novel. I loved writing it, and I especially enjoyed writing the role of John Quincy Adams in the Saloon, and drawing upon the things that I could from his presidency and his life, which helped tell the story and convey the message that I'm trying to convey in the novel. And he certainly he detested partisan politics, and that's what kind of drove my novel. Actually, I'm with him on that. But anyhow, if you check it out, I hope you enjoy your time in the Saloon. We are better than this, so much better. Cheers.